Talk Shop from Civic Center. This segment with Joseph Kibler for Wyoming governor in the 2026 election, brought to you by Home on the Range, Animal Haven, with their Good Times raffle with prizes over $6,000 in prizes, 5 packages for you to select, but you can't win without a ticket. You can support this 501c3 and they're drawing September 13th. Visit LaramieHomeOnTheRange.org. And Yow Hunting Camp for ladies, August 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, hosted by yowhunting.com. That's YOWHunting.com. This upcoming camp will be at Snowy Mountain Lodge above Centennial, Wyoming. Snowy Mountain Lodge, one of the Talk Shop's newest supporters, and we appreciate that dearly. Joseph Kibler in Studio 255. Hello, Mr. Kibler.
Hello.
Howard's, in our first segment, we talked probably about more than a dozen different topics, spanning from education, homeschooling, school choice, energy, nuclear disposal, and the topic of government overreach. I want to go back into states' rights versus federal rights.
Yeah.
Citizens' rights locally versus federal overreach. The crossover is quite a dragnet today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, bureaucracy is massive, as we know, Eric, right? And we still continue to pass. I was talking to someone yesterday, again, someone who is a refugee here or someone who came from another state, and they're fighting for liberty and freedom here in Wyoming. And they kind of brought up the point that even at the federal level, you know, we keep passing these, we don't call them omnibus bills anymore. I guess that's not politically correct, but we keep passing these pieces of legislation that are, 1,000+ pages. And the bureaucracy, how it starts just at the federal level, but it trickles down. But let's go from the bottom up, because I think that's what affects us, right? You start with the lowest level of bureaucracy, which might be your homeowners association, right? And then you get your city and your county, government. Then you get the state on top of that. And then you get the federal government on top of that. And we have legislated ourselves and our freedoms into oblivion, Eric. The role of government, to me, is relatively simple. Safety, and by the way, don't use the guise of safety to take away rights, because that's a flawed argument at best. But it is safety and infrastructure. Give us roads that we can drive on, and let's hold evil at bay in our society and keep society safe and civil. Other than that,
Isn't that an illusion?
Oh,
Isn't safety ultimately an illusion?
well, safety is an illusion, and this was one of the arguments actually that Laramie County was using on the guise of taking away our private property rights, was safety. Boy, if everybody has a permit, we know everyone who's doing everything everywhere, right? Well, this is just as flawed as the gun-free zone argument, right, Eric? Because you put a gun-free zone on your door over here for the studio. Is the criminal going to look at that sign and go, "Oh wow, I better not go in there. I better not commit this crime because it's a gun-free zone"? Well, safety is what government loves to use as a facade. So you pass this home occupation permit thing, right, Eric? And oh yeah, boy, that guy who's let's say running that meth lab in his garage, he's going to go, "Oh, wow, Laramie County just passed this permit requirement. I better call Justin up and set up my appointment to get my permit for my meth lab." That's never going to happen, Eric. Or my explosive factory, or my, my whatever, the harmful and illegal things that we do. They're not going to get a permit. They're not going to be safe. I was a firefighter for 20 years, Eric. I know a little bit about safety. I might even be a safety expert. And I could tell you that the people who are going to do those bad things are never going to follow the rules. So don't use the guise of safety to take my freedom or your liberty away. Don't use the guise of freedom, of safety to do that.
What's the response time for upholding your Second Amendment rights by the Constitution of the United States to reach to your nightstand or to your wall or to your gun cabinet, as opposed to law enforcement, even 911, dispatch to your location from wherever they might be. Which is more responsive and upholds your safety the most?
Well, it's a matter of life and death, and those minutes matter, Eric. And I think for me, and for those watching, when it comes to gun rights, what I want to see happen is, let's just go back to the Second Amendment. See, we've so complicated all of these issues, Eric. Let's just get rid of what we've got. You know what? It makes sense that you should not be able to carry a firearm into a courtroom. That makes a ton of sense. There are those few instances in our culture and society where, yeah, you know what? Taking guns into courtrooms is probably not a great idea. But for the rest of it, roll back to the Second Amendment. Roll back to, hey, you know what? We, Wyoming, we accept the benefits of this freedom and the consequences of this freedom, because that's what true liberty is.
That's choice.
Yeah, that's choice. We have to recognize that our freedoms come with responsibilities. They also come with benefits and consequences. But what we've decided as a culture is that we're going to turn so much of that over to government and government's responsibility. And we need to take that back. Let's just roll gun. So yeah, it goes down the pike, Eric. Let's roll back the removal, because we're removing people's liberties all the time. Or we're making it harder for them to jump through the hoops by doing more of the same in a different way under the guise of a different title or a different party or a different ideology. When it needs to be simple, it just needs to go back to the people. But the flip side of that, Eric, is the people need to be willing to take those responsibilities back. Raise your own kids. Don't have the government raise your kids. It's your job to raise the kids, and you need to be held responsible as a parent if you're not raising your kids.
December 3rd, 2024, Laramie City Council adopted a utility. The vote was split. It was 6 in favor of adopting the utility, 3 against adoption of the utility. And the creation of a utility fund is unquestionably done according to Wyoming statute allowance. It's allowed by law. Mm-hmm. What became problematic was that Wyoming statute 1610-105 subsection E was bypassed. That specific language delineates that all utility funds, how they are funded, must be presented to the electorate.
To the voters.
To the voters. And July 1st, the city of Laramie, after 6 solid months of development of this program, implemented a tax. All of us saw it on our utility bill from the city of Laramie. And much protest came about. August 5th, City Council suspended that measure for 120 days. Along with that was an immediate credit on the August bill, presumably, of your July surface drainage fee. Yeah. And there's language of whether it's a fee or a tax. No question, it's how the fund was going to be implemented. It was how it was going to happen, and it clearly didn't go to the voter. On August 5th, 9 city council members, in their discussion, not one of them said we violated citizens' rights and their right to vote. Two city councilors did note that they thought it should go to the voters. A third asked on December 3rd, 2024, what are we basing our vote of 9 versus the voters in the electorate deciding on how this utility will be funded? Good question. On third reading, Mr. Kibler, the city attorney for Laramie said this: "It's been a while since I read all of this. I'm not prepared to give you a direct answer tonight to your question.
Yeah.
How will you hold government accountable?
Yeah, well, it's my understanding that water runoff is actually in Cheyenne. I believe January 1st, they're going to see those water runoff fees. And like you so well pointed out, there's that statute in the Wyoming Constitution that says you got to put this to the voters. And the way that some of these commissioners or these council members have gotten around this is going back to Article 15, I believe it is, where they just sort of apparently feel like they could do whatever they want. And so what we have to do, you think about that. You mentioned that all nine of them, yet the people didn't want it. So where's the representation? Again, going back to your argument, why is it that our elected officials, so many of them, don't represent the voice of the people? And you know what? Let's say that I get elected governor and I got this really great idea that I pitched to the legislature or whatever. And I want to get this done in Wyoming. And I think it's just the best thing since sliced bread. But the people of Wyoming say, Joseph, we don't want that. We don't want that here in Wyoming, whatever it is. Guess what?
Which people do you listen to?
Guess what? I back off. And I go, you know what? I had the greatest idea since sliced bread in Wyoming. The people in Wyoming said they don't like it. You know what? I don't get my feelings hurt. I don't fight with the people of Wyoming. I say, okay, Wyoming, you didn't think my idea was the best idea since sliced bread. Let's move on. That's how government leaders need to act. And you know what? If government leaders think we need this water runoff fee, right? We need this because then they need to do a better job making their case with the people so that the people will go in support of what they're trying to do. And you know what? This goes back to the consequences of liberty and freedom. If Albany County, if Laramie needs money for, fixing the water structure in the city and, the water systems and things like that, they need to make the case for that to the voters in such a way that the voters will support it. And guess what? If the voters say no, they need to go with no. And Laramie will suffer the consequences of that at some point.
Why would any elected official at any level of government, given a conflict in law, suppose, just for the sake of this conversation, let's presume that Wyoming Statute Section 15 plausibly permits the action taken, in this case by the city of Laramie or city of Cheyenne.
Yeah.
But 16 clearly conflicts with that and clearly outlines what must happen. There's a whole section on presentation, due process of presentation to the voters, the timing of it. What elected official, what could they possibly be afraid of if the voters if the ultimate decision is put to the very people who elected them for a decision?
Well, I think something like this, if you look at it, just if I could play devil's advocate just for a minute, if you look at something like this, and let's say the infrastructure is failing, well, we need to come up with a plan to address that, right? We need to do something about that. But I think what happens in so many of these cases, I'm going to say a couple of things. One, we've created bureaucracy so big that a lot of times we don't even know all the rules. The council members may not know all the rules. I will give them that. I guess that's what an attorney's role is to try to inform them and educate them on that. But we've created such a massive bureaucracy that it's almost impossible for people to know all the rules in the first place, whether it's our local leaders or our legislative leaders, or you go up the line or down the line. We've created such a massive bureaucracy that's tough. So I want to say that in way to give some cadence to this. So we need to unwind bureaucracy. But the other thing is we've got to figure out ways to get the public on board with some of these things. And by the way, we use the guise of fees to get around the Wyoming Constitution, just so you know. Because the local municipalities cannot issue tax. right? So we just fee everything. Everything has a fee. And we do have to ask our questions. Well, is this more of a tax?
1610-105E totally relieves that. They do so, Wyoming state law does so by the funding of a utility.
Right. What's a specific?
That's completely irrelevant. That makes fee or tax language irrelevant.
Yeah.
You are absolutely funding the utility. And it is so clear, but yet bypassed by elected officials who every term of office may consider re-election.
Yep.
May consider running, and the incumbents statistically always have an advantage over a new candidate for office.
and
new ideas are not always welcome.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the little carrots that we do get from our elected officials are because they want re-election, right? Like, so they don't go all the way. Like, they didn't roll back all of the home occupancy rules in our county, in Laramie County. But they rolled back enough to where it would, where we felt okay about it, right? And I think a lot of that comes to, well, I want to get reelected. And so it's politically motivated. It's not, and I can't judge the heart, but when are we going to start doing things in a way that is truly in the interest of the people and meaningful?
You bring up a topic with respect to elections. One audience member asks about upholding voter integrity. How does this topic resonate for you as you are a new candidate for Wyoming governor?
Well, again, I think with everything, bureaucracy has complicated things, including elections. I mean, this should be extremely simple. And by the way, tip my proverbial hat to our Secretary of State, Chuck Gray, who really has fought this fight. It needs to be really simple. U.S. citizen, Wyoming resident. End of story. And somehow that's too complicated. But that needs to be done across the nation. In fact, this should be done at a federal level. You cannot vote if you are not a U.S. citizen and a resident of your state. And I believe that should be not voting migration, that somehow we're funding people to move so we can tip a vote. But you've been here. You vote for that. Yeah.
You talk about in your campaign upholding freedom.
Yeah.
And other candidates have talked about Wyoming is best at its freest.
Yeah.
Isn't crossover voting a choice that should be upheld for Wyoming voters?
Eric, I think anyone should be able to vote for anybody. Like literally. Get rid of the parties. Like, you should be able to vote for whoever you want to vote for. That goes back to individual personal right, freedom, and liberty. So, yeah, I mean, that's a simple answer to that question. I should be able to vote for whoever I want to.
In the 2024 election cycle in Albany County, citizens running candidacy for elected office were found in the counting room of Albany County for local races. Whether they're an election judge or a counting, they're incorporated as a counting member of the results. What's your position with respect to that? Isn't that something that should be looked at in Wyoming?
I mean, didn't this just happen? I think a really good example of this recently, wasn't it in Arizona, where the person responsible for all of the ballot counting and the final results was also the person running against, was it Tulsi Gabbard?
It might have been. I'm not familiar with the instance.
Maybe it wasn't Tulsi Gabbard.
I just know.
But yeah,
I just know that in Laramie, Wyoming, a candidate on the ballot in that election,
in the room,
in the counting room, feeding ballots.
Yeah.
Now, I find that a huge conflict.
Probably not the best optics.
State election laws prohibit within so many feet signage or campaigning.
Right. Yeah.
Is there any time during your candidacy your campaign button turns off? Is there any time where you're not viewed by the public as a candidate once you've declared you're running for Wyoming governor?
Oh, not at all. I mean,
are you always subject to that scrutiny?
When you are, I mean, obviously, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I mean, when you're talking about leading in government at any level, you should be accountable and be held to a higher standard of things. And that means being above reproach, but that also means what's going on behind closed doors. You know, what are you doing behind closed doors? I think it's so important. So, yeah, I mean, the answer is that's extremely bad optics in a situation like that. Do we want to have fine citizens keeping an eye on our election process? Absolutely. For myself, probably would not be appropriate for me to be in that room, but maybe a person on my campaign, perhaps watching, the room. And of course we're fighting electronic ballots right now and paper ballots, and are we going to go back to hand counting and all of these different issues when it comes to election? I think we got to figure out where all that's going to land and then make a decision there. I don't think it would be appropriate for someone such as myself to be in that room, but that would just be a standard that I would hold myself to.
So individual by individual choice
yeah.
is your position on that, or in your case, you wouldn't be there?
No, it needs to be above reproach. And if it gives that view that this is not above reproach, then I would encourage an elected official to mind their manners and watch what they're doing. Yeah.
In Albany County, 2 election judges witnessed similar instances and reported by affidavits filed with the Secretary of State and Albany County their concerns about what they witnessed with respect to this specific
candidate
issue and the candidate. And in that, they made public, at least one made request for under the Wyoming Public Records Act for freedom of information. They wanted access to review video and various items.
Yeah.
State law provides for 30 days delay on such a request, any request.
Yeah.
Is that time necessary, or do you feel like that is bureaucracy at its finest?
Well, I think a lot of times what they have to do in situations like this, if there's a lot of requests, I mean, they have to set a reasonable boundary so that they can actually put the information together for the public. I know that could be difficult, but it's not infinite. I mean, government is not infinite. And if they're getting 300 requests across the state at the same time, they don't have the capacity to process those. And so there needs to be windows for those things. And I think that that's really important. I mean, it could be in this case a well-intending, wanting to be a public servant kind of a person put themselves in this situation unintentionally. It could be like seeing your pastor even in a public place with a woman who's not his wife, right? Maybe he's encouraging her or praying with her or counseling with her, but they're in a public place, but it still gives that idea or that perception that something inappropriate could be going on there. And so that pastor or these politicians or these candidates need to be careful, because you need to be above reproach, in things like that.
Be careful making it on the
I'm not going to be
Jumbotron.
Perfect. By the way, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually going to mention that right now. You totally read my mind. When I saw that, it's so easy for us to throw the stone that direction, right, Eric? But it caused me to look at myself in the mirror and go, wow, if my life was on the Jumbotron, which it kind of is now in some ways, if my whole life was on the Jumbotron, what would people see? And by the way, I'm not going to be perfect at this, Eric. So there will be times probably when I do things that are bad optics. Like, I'm not even sure if that first live video had audio on it, because I don't know if this little microphone was working. It was plugged in. It was calibrated. It was here, but I don't know if there's audio on that first video. That's kind of bad optics, right? Now, no one's going to maybe not cast a stone on me for that. But the point is that we can't be flawless, but we do have to be careful, Eric.
Where does empathy come into your considerations as you would point out the critical infrastructure for Wyoming?
Yeah, because empathy was the number one word that Wyoming wanted. I've been just kind of processing that a whole lot. I'm a pretty cut and dry guy. And even if you were to maybe even ask my wife, she'd be like, yeah, he's not super empathetic. He's more like, just get it done. Just figure it out. Just like work it out. But when I step back, and I've been on probably about 100 mission trips, and I do have empathy for mankind and for humanity and for people in general. For me, when it comes to empathy towards Wyoming, I think it's really listening to everyone is so important. Even if that doesn't mean I have to agree, Eric, by the way. That doesn't mean we have to agree on everything. But if I will listen and just give some human kindness, I think that's going to make a huge difference in this campaign. I think it'll make a difference for Wyoming if their leaders have a little bit of human kindness in their hearts.
When it comes to Laramie, Wyoming, we've been a city for roughly 150 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
City manager Janine Jordan noted and acknowledged in city council work session recently that infrastructure had been insufficiently funded for a very long time. And obviously too long. Yet beautification projects in the hundreds of thousands of dollars are not put towards these critical infrastructure issues. They're put administratively towards other projects, which are to the common citizen, they don't make sense. Because they fail to live within their means.
And they say they need more money.
Since December, it appears that an entire department, a surface water management department, has been created. We went from the approval of an engineer technician position on December 3rd being approved in order to prepare to implement this July 1st fee to fund a utility to 6. We've got six employees that are apparently 4 of 6 dedicated to the management program. This is a growing department in all departments, in spite of the fact Laramie population has not increased proportional to government growth in staffing. This continues to happen. As Wyoming governor, should you be elected, what effort will you maintain to see that statutes are upheld? The Attorney General's office, when called by the talk shop, would not handle a consumer complaint on the July utility fee implemented. Yet we're a consumer, and that's a state statute that needs defending for the public good. Denied. Also, the Wyoming Public Utilities Commission said it's not in their purview to the talk shop. So they only handle certain areas of the utility situation. Where does the public go when elected officials ignore them? In Laramie, the conversation comes up to have an elected mayor.
Yes, I saw that recently.
In the alternative to being an appointed mayor and therefore a figurehead.
Right.
It's more than a figurehead, though. When you lead meetings, you have power. And you have influence. And when the city manager is the strongest administrator in the room by design, and they are untouchable to the city, save 9 city council members deciding is, again, I go back to what's the resistance that you would have to putting matters to the vote, put it to the electorate? Is that something that you would encourage, or is that something that you would discourage, or are there cases that you would say both?
Yeah, there's ways in which our current processes and even our current rules and laws really kind of get in the way of getting things to the voters in a lot of ways. There are, for instance, the recent People's Initiatives. I don't think there's been a People's Initiative that has gotten or may potentially be on the ballot in 26. There's like 30 years since the people have gotten something on the state level ballot. There's a reason for that.
What's worse?
It's complicated.
In 8 property tax initiatives in 2024 that were brought up in the spring, they were seeking signatures to petition from December through, I think it was April at least.
Yeah.
Not one of those were immediately adopted by elected officials. I will sponsor that. I appreciate the public doing this. Yeah. I don't know what will happen to it.
There's a disconnect there.
There's an absolute tragedy in representation.
Now, while I don't see, giving property tax breaks as a long-term solution, because what I want is a solution. I want to actually come up with a plan.
Downsize government?
Yeah. We need to follow a path. My own family's property taxes are up $1,500 a year. Well, I make a living. That's called a fixed income, right? Like we live on it's not just people on Social Security that live on a fixed income. I have a job. I get paid for that job. Where does the extra income come from? So we have to, what I want to see in situations like this. But again, the Constitution makes it hard for people to get things on the ballot. It's hard for people to get things on the ballot and to actually vote. So I see a mix on that. I was speaking to a gentleman yesterday, and he was telling me, Joseph, we really need a 4-lane highway between Gillette and Douglas. It's very, very, very dangerous. And he was just, sharing some of his concerns with me. And so, I do ask the question is why are we funding these beautification things, let's say, and things like that when the people need something more urgently? And by the way, I've driven around this state. I've been on the bad roads, now. We lead the nation in decent roads and decent infrastructure in many ways overall. So, yes, we might complain about the pothole that we've got, but again, our taxes are also lower than 48 states, right? So we do have to take a little perspective in stock, but we also have the highest per capita public servants versus population in the nation. So we have the most amount of public employees and or servants, if you want to call them that, per capita in the nation. But part of that is we're so spread out. We're just so spread out. A small population is spread out over a massive space. And there's governance that's needed in even those remote and rural areas. So I think smaller government, but Eric, how long have we been talking about smaller government?
Yeah,
that's what we run on.
It's a never-ending story.
We run on talking about smaller government. Yeah. Did the Freedom Caucus make government any smaller this last session?
I remember Doge cutting many things and identifying many things that needed cut.
Yeah.
But yet, it seems that the big beautiful bill doubled the budget.
It just almost. This is more of doing it
the way we wanted to spend the money as opposed to.
It's just more of doing the same in a different way. Right. That's kind of that's what I was getting at. And yes, the Freedom Caucus, and we'll see what happens. We will see what happens during the budget session next spring to see if government's going to get any smaller. But what I've seen is we're just moving this money from over here, and because we're interested in this, we're going to go ahead and do this instead. So we're just moving it. We're not making it smaller. We're not making bureaucracy smaller in very many ways.
I want to shift gears to the University of Wyoming for a minute. The University of Wyoming on August 8th proudly toured media and public through North Hall which will open this fall term on the University of Wyoming campus in Laramie. Beautiful structure.
Yeah.
Will house somewhere between 400 and 500 students. Orr Hall, built in the 1960s, has been offline for a year.
Yeah.
Underutilized. Perhaps not maintained as it had been in operation. Downey Hall will be offline as of this month, next month.
Right.
It will be off this term.
Yeah.
McIntyre Hall, the tallest or second tallest building in the state of Wyoming, will be also built in the 1960s, will be taken offline in December. And those students, as I understand from residence life officials, will be moved into South Hall, which is anticipated to open. And North Hall and South Hall are name placeholders presently, as we didn't proceed from the beginning with a plan on exactly what these important buildings were going to be called. $280 million investment. As remote learning exploded in 2020, given COVID, and college campuses entirely closed.
Yeah.
The University of Wyoming, with its only 4-year state institution, expanded its investment. As Wyoming governor, what's your position on that practice and facility utilization being closed, not used for homeless, not used to ease affordable housing concerns, not used for Laramie County Community College Albany campus,
or
not
even
used for
Wyotech.
Wyotech
comes to mind.
For these, and why is the state of Wyoming owns school properties.
Yes.
And
that's where a lot of our school funding actually comes from.
And so elementary schools
the
that go vacant, they're left vacant by the control of the state of Wyoming. Isn't that the greatest waste that we could possibly do, when these could be retrofitted to be apartments? They could be helping to resolve such important critical issues as stated in campaign after campaign for the election.
Yeah. Coming up with sensible use for these abandoned spaces. I mean, we have a ton of them in Cheyenne as well, where these spaces are, for whatever reason, ill-maintained or abandoned, or even, what comes to mind, for me is, Wyotech is growing. I went on a vacation with the family. We had an opportunity to go with my in-laws to Hawaii a couple of weeks ago, and it was a wonderful trip. First time there, we had a wonderful time. And I met a gentleman at a little church that we went to there, and he said, "Oh yeah, I went to Wyotech to get my mechanics certifications and stuff." And it occurred to me, I'm like, wow, like the impact that Wyoming has in some of its really unique and really specific programs. And here is this guy who, "Oh no, Joseph, I just went to Wyoming for Wyotech, and then I'm back here in Hawaii, and I'm using my skills at a shop here," and going, it's a shame that we're abandoning it, because, Wyotech would be a good example. Affordable housing, boy, we talk a lot about it, right? But then we're going, well, let's just get rid of public lands and build more affordable housing. By the way, it's just an excuse. I don't want to get too much into the public lands thing in this conversation, but we can if you want to. But yeah, why aren't we sensibly repurposing these buildings that are owned? And I think we need to look at that. But this ties into legislation and everything. Why aren't we looking at what we have before adding more layers to it, right? What do we have that we could serve Laramie with, Albany County with? What do we already have? And let's work with that before we're going, oh, hey, well, let's get this land and let's build affordable housing and do X, Y, and Z. But we don't do that as government. We don't look at what we have. I mean, I often, even with my family, sometimes maybe my wife or my kids want to buy something, right? Or I want to buy something. And a lot of times you can just use this very simple philosophy. Well, wait, what do we have already that could fill this need? And a lot of times we'll go, oh, I got that piece of wood out there. I got that whatever. We can do this without having to go out and buy something or get something new. And we can accomplish the exact same thing. And so I think government's got to implement that household philosophy of the idea when it comes to legislation or housing or just whatever. What do we already have that we could work with?
Misguided government allocation, government prioritization of projects seems to be the greatest opportunity to improve within the existing revenue stream.
Yeah.
Expansion, you talked about fear in a previous segment. Fear imposed. Affordable housing's that fear.
Right.
It's actually a guise for
a fear tool.
It's a guise for, it's the dream. We want affordable. Who doesn't want affordable housing?
Right.
But
right.
That definition is like, what is a true conservative?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't want to make America great?
Right.
Who doesn't? I mean, just
yeah.
These are they're spin lines, and the intention is to unite enough to get elected.
Right. Right.
And that needs a serious microscope.
And when you look at reality, Eric, and we tend to be so insular, like I said, we don't look beyond our fence. The housing issue, let's talk about affordable housing. That's a global problem right now, right? It's not, yes, it's a Wyoming problem, but this is a global. I mean, it's not just unique to Wyoming.
Should government solve that problem, or should private sector respond to
I
that
think
supply
the part of the
demand?
reason that we are in so many of these difficult or challenging cultural societal issues is because government has been involved in creating them.
Imposing rules, code enforcement,
government
and expansion, not retraction.
Government is creating so many of these problems, and that can be interest rates. That can be, like you said. I was talking to a contractor out in Cheyenne, or someone who works with a lot of contractors in Cheyenne. They said, well, yeah, we've got all these new building codes. For instance, we got to put this backing behind the drywall around the top of behind the drywall on all the walls now. Well, and he told me, well, that's a couple $1,000s more for a house, right? So it adds like all these little things, right, that we got to do. I think it's an energy efficiency standard or something like this, right? And so we go, so is it really, what's really causing the rise in costs? And I'll tell you what, 99 times out of 100, it's something that government or bureaucracy has done that's caused that issue. Now, right now, I think we have like 500,000 more homes on the market than there are buyers. The problem is that home prices are not going down. And that's probably because there's an expectation of folks that they think, well, they're going to get a really, really high price for their house.
And requirements for financing.
Yeah.
They're easier than they were 20 years ago.
No, they're no easier. But so we do have to ask, why are we here? And what has caused us? And a lot of times it is bureaucracy, Eric, that's got us here. But then bureaucracy always thinks that they have the answer with more bureaucracy. When the real answer, the genuine answer, is less bureaucracy at all levels, from homeowners associations to the federal government.
Current elected representatives in the state of Wyoming are challenged with the accusation that they are purporting federal agenda, not state agenda.
Yeah.
Would you care to comment on that?
It's interesting because the county of our county, Laramie County, purported that they were just supporting state agenda as one of their arguments.
Oh, the pass off.
Yeah. So this passing off of responsibility is so enjoyed. Well, it's not really us, it's the state. Oh, it's not really the state, it's the federal government. Well, I would say that there probably is some measure of truth to that, Eric. But we have nobody pushing from the bottom up. So what we need to do, if it's a federal thing, the state should be pushing back and representing the people. If it's a state issue, the county commissioner should be pushing against the state and representing the people.
Do you believe in government expansion of services, taxing tobacco, alcohol? Some refer to them as sin tax.
Yeah, yeah.
What makes that okay? Furthering the utilization of substances that arguably do not make you healthier as a citizenry.
Yeah, I think that's part of the justification for increasing taxes on that, or even like increasing taxes on gambling and things of that nature. I mean, for me personally, if I was to look at some of this stuff, I would really ask what are the societal and cultural benefits of gambling. But that's also an aspect of free society, Eric, that I think we need to be really careful about. And I know, like, for instance, with cigarettes, things like that, the taxes there because of the health ramifications that come on the other side, right? And funding the health care for the results of that decision. So there is some sense in some of that. But I think we have to be careful because I think we want to live and let live. And yeah, are there things that are bad culturally for society and probably not the best for your or my health? Yeah, absolutely. But how far do we want to go in bureaucracy in those issues? Now, you have to fund the thing somehow. One of the things that's come up is, and you probably know this, Wyoming, America, we have mental health crises for a wide range of reasons. And we do not have the infrastructure to support and to meaningfully address the level of health crisis that we have when it comes to mental health. So how are we going to fund that? What are we going to do that? Is that government's job or is it private entities' job? I mean, maybe government should get out of the way. Maybe government can help support private entities in that way, but then that's a slippery slope, Eric, right? Because then that's tax dollars. Are we subsidizing it? What are we doing? But we have to find meaningful ways to address the crises that are before us. But we also have to figure out a way to find the balance between taking freedom away or using tax dollars in a way that's not beneficial to the people of Wyoming.
Our last question from the audience for Joseph Kibler for Wyoming governor in the 2026 campaign is this one. Joseph, what are the rights of the unborn?
That's a great question. I think we spoke about this one time, Eric. And for me, first of all, life begins at conception. That's the high level of it. The unborn should have equal rights. It's interesting. We give the unborn of animals more rights than our unborn have. We care more about, we call that elephant, that elephant in the womb, a baby elephant, right? We call that, that baby dolphin, a baby dolphin or whatever. But we don't call our own prodigy after its own kind. We give it another name so that we can find a way to destroy it. So life begins at conception. But can I give a cliff note on that or no?
Final comment's yours.
Yeah.
You'll have it. You'll have that. Go ahead.
You're not going to hear me talk a lot about abortion on the campaign trail. And here's why. That's a valid battle to fight. But we have so beat that thing to death. And what we haven't addressed, Eric, is why do people get abortions? And we do in some ways. What if we just brought back the value of self and the value of other people's lives into our culture, into our education? What if we taught our kids that decisions have consequences, but that you own those consequences and that you take responsibility for those consequences? So I want to talk more on the campaign trail about why do people get abortions. And if we put the kind of energy that we put into abortion, into the actual reasons why people get abortions, which really is our devaluing of life. That's the core issue. Maybe we'll win more of that battle when it comes to life because people now value life. So that's
Joseph Kibler for Wyoming governor in the 2026 election cycle. We appreciate you joining us here on the Talk Shop. And as is customary, we want to give you the final close. But one last topic for you to touch on, if you would, in your closing: economic diversity and what you would do to promote that for Wyoming.
I love economic diversity and development. I really, really do. What I want to stop seeing, though, is that we do this at the cost of the taxpayer. And what I'm talking about is subsidies. I'm talking about tax breaks. I'm talking about the ways that all of this that we do for economic development, but we put the burden, the financial burden, on the taxpayers. We're subsidizing things that can't stand on their own 2 feet. And there may be use cases for that where that's appropriate, no doubt. But we have to stop this idea that economic development has to involve the taxpayers' money and subsidies is not good for economic. We need these things to be able to do their own thing, to pay taxes, to contribute, we're giving, these breaks to these data centers and with these ideas and these plans and ultimately, whether it's a water situation or things, how are we dealing with this stuff? So I love economic development. I love R&D. But at some point, something's got to be able to stand on its own 2 feet. I mean, that's how it works in the real world, right? My business, I've had business for 22 years, and COVID killed us. I mean, it just, it was tough. It was really, really hard. But you got to do it like the real world has to do it and figure out a way to do it, And so I think with that and economic development, we've got a lot of great ways that Wyoming can grow. Energy is certainly one of them. Rare earth minerals is another one of them. Tourism, we could look at tourism, how we can grow that. So there are ways for Wyoming to grow economically and responsibly while maintaining its culture. I think that's really, really important to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other closing comments?
Yeah, if you're listening to or seeing this show, or you're listening to it now live or later, go to joseph4wy.com. joseph4wy.com if you want to just talk to me or have a conversation. Hey, you know what? My email, my phone number is on there. You guys can text me, call me anytime you want to. You can also support the campaign there on the website. Really easy to do. So, but yeah, just go to the website is all I'm going to say, because you can literally find everything you need to know about the campaign there.
Joseph Kibler for Wyoming Governor today on the Talk Shop. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone.